And the honourable member for Mount Royal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to share my time by allocating 5 minutes to questions. I would like to take this opportunity, since it is the first time that I rise in this place, to thank the voters of Mount Royal for having elected me. Et j'aimerais aussi féliciter tous les autres députés dans cette Chambre pour leur élection. One of the things that I've always said in my experience as a mayor, Mr. Chair, is that politics is best done when we all work together, and I hope in the coming years to work together with all of the members of this place. So I'm very proud to rise on a question of appropriations related to the Syrian refugees. As we all know, Mr. Speaker, Canada is a country that has had a history of welcoming refugees. My own family came to Canada over a century ago, fleeing religious persecution in Europe. Many people in this House had similar experiences, whether themselves, their parents, grandparents, or great-grandparents. And I know that we all join together in wanting to welcome people because Canada has been at its best when we've been welcoming and at its worst when we've closed our doors. But of course, as members of this House know, we have to get things right. So I'm pleased to speak today both on the security aspects that are of rightful concern to many Canadians and on the health aspects that are of rightful concern to many Canadians about the refugee resettlement in Canada. Resettling refugees is a national effort. It will require significant coordination and support, beginning, of course, with members of this place. Mr. Chair, I want to address how the government will select and process Syrian refugees overseas. This work represents the second phase of our announced 5-phase national plan. I will tell you about how the government is making sure refugees meet security requirements prior to their arrival in this country and what kind of medical screening they will undergo. I will also make clear to you the costs these efforts entail. To meet its commitment of Syrian refugee resettlement, Canada will work with the governments of Jordan, Lebanon, and Turkey, along with international and Canadian partners. This is to identify government-assisted refugees. We are also, as the Minister clearly stated, processing privately sponsored refugees to meet the goal of 25,000 by the end of February 2016. To identify UN-registered Syrian refugees in Jordan and Lebanon, the Government of Canada is working with the UN High Commission on Refugees. They have already begun contacting refugees to determine if they are interested in coming to Canada. I would note, Mr. Chair, that this organization has also already identified groups of people who they believe are eligible for resettlement in the West. And another thing, Mr. Speaker, that I want to reiterate is our commitment to take in the refugees that are the most vulnerable, which would include members of religious minorities and others like gays and lesbians who are subject to persecution. The government will process refugees who want to make the journey to our country at 2 dedicated contact centers, one in Amman, Jordan, and one in Beirut. These offices will be staffed by experienced immigration officers, as well as other government officials and security partners. Protecting the safety, security, and health of Canadians and refugees is a very key factor guiding our actions throughout this initiative. The timeline of the government that we have set out will allow us to complete refugee processing overseas while doing robust health and security screening. Visa officers will take the time to screen refugees carefully before accepting them for resettlement in Canada. And as the Minister has stated, if there are any red flags, those refugees will not be processed in this early batch of refugees. Security screening will include collecting biographical information and biometrics, such as fingerprints and digital photos. These will be checked against immigration, law enforcement, and security databases. Tous les cas vont être processés par les procédures actuellement en place. S'il y a des questions qui on a besoin d'extra information, ce dossier sera mis aux côtés. Screening will also include full medical exams. This will include checking for communicable diseases such as tuberculosis. Once prospective refugees have undergone screening, those selected will receive permanent resident visas. We will then prepare to bring them to Canada. And the government is planning to transport refugees using charter aircraft and military planes. The International Organization for Migration, a humanitarian agency that specializes in coordinating travel of large groups, will manage the operation. They have previously worked with the Government of Canada and will ensure that migration is safe and orderly. Statistics on the Department's website are helping to tell the story of where Canada stands in processing the refugees it is committed to bring here. The website is tallying up-to-date numbers showing refugees who have arrived in Canada since the government made its commitment to welcome 25,000 Syrians to this country. And I also want to take this opportunity, Mr. Chair, to congratulate the previous government on accepting Iraqi refugees and doing so much to bring Iraqi refugees to Canada. We need to care for people from all over, and nobody has a monopoly on virtue, so I want to congratulate the previous government. The federal government has already announced its financial commitment for this massive effort of identifying, screening, transporting, and welcoming these thousands of Syrian refugees. As we move forward on this great national project, we must contend with the costs of processing applications overseas. We anticipate these costs to be between $40 and $50 million across all areas of government, with $19.1 million of that figure at IRCC. Let me remind this House that these costs are actually lower than if we did this job in country, and I think we all agree as parliamentarians that we're very happy that the security issues are being dealt with abroad before anybody arrives in Canada. Funding will be closely monitored, controlled, and reported on. I ask honourable members to approve the appropriations we have set aside under these supplementary estimates. And what we have before us, Mr. Chair, is not a partisan project. It's a Canadian project. All members of this chamber, whatever parties they come from, should be on side with an effort such as this, because as I stated, this is bringing out what's best in us as Canadians. Resettling refugees is a proud part of the Canadian humanitarian tradition. It demonstrates to the world that we have a strong moral compass to help people who are displaced and in need of protection. Mr. Chair, I believe this is time for Canadians to come together and to put our hearts and minds together to welcome these refugees. So let us show the world what Canada is made of. As my colleague said earlier, let us get this job done, let us get it done well, and let's get it done all together. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Questions? The honourable member for Scarborough Agincourt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first I want to congratulate my friend from Mount Royal for his maiden address here in the House of Commons. And you have some big shoes to fill as well, given your predecessor who occupied the seat before you. My question, dealing with the